Okay, dear students, welcome back to the class. In the last class, I gave you some assignments which were the textual questions. So first, let's come to that. The first one, Mikali wandered like a lost soul. Comment on the comparison. He wandered about, carrying on his back the deafening burden of a newborn babe. He did not get help or protection from any source. And he felt he was dying from lack of sleep and weariness. Coming to the next question, why did the refugees wish that the child would die? Everybody listened to the child's howl with irritation. They had so many troubles of their own. So they wished the child to die. The next one. Notice how the woman behaved. What do you think about their attitude? No woman in the camp came forward to help and protect the child. Really, it is very saddening and shameful, but they should behave like this. Next question. What made Mikali go to the camp of the Anatolians? He heard that there was a nursing mother and he hoped that she might take pity on the baby and give him milk. Next one. Mikali did not stop when the old woman rose to ask him what he wanted, because the answer is C. He wanted to see the nursing mother. The next one. Why was Mikali happy? He thought that the Anatolian lady would give the baby milk. Next one. Why did the woman give vent to cries of horror? The baby's head had become enormous and the body thin. As it had sucked only its thumb, it was swollen. Okay, now let's come to our lesson, maternity. In the last class, we saw how Mikali went to the Anatolian camp and he was driven away by the woman over there because the baby was not looking like a human being. കഴിഞ്ഞ ക്ലാസ്സിൽ നമ്മൾ കണ്ടത് എന്താണ്? മിക്കാലി അനറ്റോളിയൻ ക്യാമ്പിലേക്ക് പോവുകയും അവിടെയുള്ള സ്ത്രീകൾ അവനെ അവിടുന്ന് ഓടിച്ചു വിടുകയാണ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്. കാരണം അവൻ്റെ കൂടെയുള്ള കുഞ്ഞിനെ കാണാൻ ഭീകരമായിരുന്നു. Okay, now let us continue. There was nothing to be done. The child was condemned to die of hunger. Mikali felt himself immensely alone and lost. A chill ran up his spine at the thought that he was carrying such an unlucky child. He slumped down in the shadow of a shed. It was still very warm. There was nothing to be done. The child was condemned to die of hunger. So Mikali cannot do anything now, and he was now sure that the child is punished to die of hunger. And he was now sure that the child will die. ആ കുട്ടി മരിക്കുമെന്ന് ഉറപ്പായി, because it is hungry. Mikali felt himself immensely means in great size, വലിയ തോതിൽ, alone and lost. A chill ran up his spine at the thought that he was carrying such an unlucky child. A chill is a feeling of being cold, തണുപ്പ്. Ran up his spine is the backbone, nattal. At the thought that he was carrying such an unlucky child. So a chill ran up his spine because he thought that he was carrying an unlucky child, because no one was ready to give the baby milk. He thought that the child is unlucky because no one was ready to give him milk. He slumped down. Slumped means to sit down heavily. He slumped down in the shadow of a shed. So he sat down in the shadow of a shed. It was still very warm. It was very warm. The country spread out before him in arid wasteland covered with refuse. Noon rang out somewhere. The sound reminded him that he had eaten nothing since the day before. He would have to go sneaking about the streets, round cafe terraces, fetching some half-eaten roll left on a plate, or else rake about in the garbage for what a dog would not have eaten. Suddenly, life seemed to him so full of horrors that he covered his face with his hands and began to sob desperately. So the country spread out before him in arid means barren, Tairishaya Sthalam, wasteland. So it was a wasteland covered with refuse, trash, waste. So in front of him, the land was a wasteland which was barren and refuse. അവിടെ ചെടികളും മരങ്ങളും ഒന്നുമില്ല. എന്ത് മാത്രമേ ഉള്ളൂ? വേസ്റ്റ് മാത്രമേ ഉള്ളൂ. Noon rang out somewhere. From somewhere, he heard that it is a sound of the noon. Maybe a sound from a place of worship. Maybe from a mosque or some other place of worship. A sound came out which showed that it was noon. The sound reminded him that he had eaten nothing since the day before. So that sound reminded him that he had eaten nothing since the day before. He would have to go sneaking about the streets. Sneaking means to go secretly and quietly. So, ഒളിഞ്ഞു പോവുക, like a thief, about the streets, around cafe terraces. Terrace is a flat area. So, around cafe terraces, around in the cafe means the hotel, flitching some half-eaten roll. Flitching means to steal small things. Flitching some half-eaten roll left on a plate. So, in the hotel, what people leave there as waste, to go and steal that. അത് പോയി മോഷ്ടിക്കുക. Because he did not have money to buy food. ഭക്ഷണം വാങ്ങിക്കഴിക്കാനുള്ള പൈസ അവൻ്റെ കയ്യിൽ ഇല്ല. Or else, rake about in the garbage. Rake about means search for, തിരയുക. In the garbage, waste food, for what a dog would not have eaten. Or he would have to go and search in the garbage, in the waste food, for what a dog has not eaten. ഒരു നായ് അവിടെ ഉപേക്ഷിച്ചു പോയ ഭക്ഷണമുണ്ടോ എന്ന് നോക്കണം. Suddenly, life seemed to him so full of horrors. Suddenly, he felt that his life is full of horrors. He covered his face with his hands and began to sob desperately. So what did he do? So he covered his face with his hands and he began to sob. Sob means cry, desperately, sadly. Suddenly, he felt that his life is full of horrors and he covered his face with his hand and he began to cry sadly. Sob means cry, desperately, sadly. So he began to cry sadly, covering his face with his hands. തൻ്റെ മുഖം കൈകൊണ്ട് പൊത്തിപ്പിടിച്ച് അവൻ കരയാൻ തുടങ്ങി. He raised his head. A man stood before him, gazing down upon him. Mikali recognized the Chinaman, who often came to the camp to sell paper knickknacks and charms, which no one ever bought from him anyway. Often they mocked him because of his color and his squint eyes. So when he raised his head, a man stood before him. There was a man standing before him, gazing down. Gaze means look at with fixed eyes. So he was gazing at him. So there was a man standing before him, looking at him. അവനെ നോക്കിക്കൊണ്ട് ഒരാൾ അവിടെ നിൽക്കുന്നു. Mikali recognized him, recognize, understood, identify, തിരിച്ചറിയുക. The Chinaman who often came to the camp to sell paper knickknacks. So he recognized him as the Chinaman who came to the camp to sell paper knickknacks. Knickknacks is small decorative objects made with paper, and charms, something that makes you feel attracted. നമ്മളെ ആകർഷിപ്പിക്കുന്ന സാധനങ്ങൾ. So Chinaman came to the camp to sell paper knickknacks and charms, which no one ever bought from him anyway. But no one bought these things from him. But every day he will come to the camp to sell all these things. Often they mocked him, make fun of Kaliyakuga because of his color and his squint eyes. Squint is a disorder of an eye muscle in which eyes look in different direction. So he was having a kind of problem with his eyes. His eyes were looking in different directions. Mikali saw that he was looking gently down at him. So Mikali saw that this Chinaman was looking gently. He was looking very kindly. വളരെ കാരുണ്യത്തോടെ അവനെ നോക്കുകയാണ്. And moving his lips as though to speak. Finally, the Chinaman said. So finally the Chinaman told to Mikali, you mustn't cry, boy. You must not cry. കരയാൻ പാടില്ല. Then timidly means with lack of courage, ധൈര്യമില്ലാതെ, Chinaman told to Mikali, come with me. Mikali's only answer was to shake his head negatively. He longed to flee. He had heard so many horrors about the cruelty of the Orientals. Mikali's only answer was to shake his head negatively. So Mikali's answer was shaking his head negatively. എതിർത്തുകൊണ്ട് അവൻ തലയാട്ടുക മാത്രമേ ചെയ്തുള്ളൂ. He did not do anything. He longed to flee, wanted, wished, ആഗ്രഹിക്കുക. To flee means run away from there. He had heard so many horrors about the cruelty of the Orientals. So why did he want to run away? Because he had heard of so many horrors about the cruelty of the Orientals. Oriental are a person from East Asia. So he had heard about the horror. Horror means പേടിപ്പിക്കുന്ന കാര്യങ്ങൾ. Something which makes one frightened. About the cruelty, ക്രൂരതകൾ. So he had heard about the cruelty of the Orientals. He had heard that the Orientals are very cruel. So he wanted to run away from there. Yet the man remained there and did not budge. But the Chinaman did not go away from there. He did not budge. Budge means to move. ചലിക്കുക. So he did not budge. അവിടുന്ന് ചലിച്ചില്ല. So being in great distress, suffering, വേദന, Mikali followed him. Mikali followed the Chinaman. What more awful thing could happen to him? Awful, painful, വേദനിപ്പിക്കുന്ന. There is nothing more painful to happen to him. അവൻ ഇനിയും വേദനിപ്പിക്കുന്ന ഒരു കാര്യങ്ങളും അവരുടെ ജീവിതത്തിൽ നടക്കാനില്ല. As they walked along, he stumbled. What do you mean by stumbling? Stumbling means to lose one's balance while walking. So he stumbled weakly and almost fell with the child, and he was going to fall down. The Chinaman came to him, taking the baby in his arms, tenderly pressed it to him. So the Chinaman came to him. The Chinaman came to Mikali. He took his baby and tenderly, very affectionately, സ്നേഹത്തോടെ, he pressed it to him. അയാൾ ആ കുഞ്ഞിനെ അയാളുടെ നെഞ്ചിനോട് ചേർത്ത് വെച്ചു. They crossed several lots, and then man took a little lane that led them to a sort of wooden cabin surrounded by very small garden. He stopped before the door and clapped his hands twice. A few light steps inside, and a tiny person came to open the door. Seeing the men, her face reddened with a happy smile lit up. She made a brief courtesy to them. As Mikali remained there hesitatingly, brought to the threshold, the Chinaman said to him, "Come in. Then do not be afraid. This is my wife." They crossed several empty lots area. കുറെ ഒഴിഞ്ഞു കിടക്കുന്ന സ്ഥലങ്ങളിലൂടെ അവർ നടന്നു. The man took a little lane. Lane is a narrow passage, ഒരു ഇടവഴി, that led to a sort of a wooden cabin. Cabin is a hut, kudil. So, and they reached a wooden hut, ഒരു മരം കൊണ്ടുണ്ടാക്കിയ കുടിലെത്തി, surrounded by a very small garden. And around that hut, there was a small garden. He stopped before the door and clapped his hands twice. He stopped before the hut and clapped his hands. കൈ 2 തവണ മുട്ടി. A few light steps inside, and he heard a few light steps inside. And a tiny person came to open the door. And a tiny person, a small person, tiny, small person came and opened the door. Seeing the men, her face reddened. Reddened means become red. Chuokuga, maybe as because of happiness. Seeing the men, her face reddened, and a happy smile lit up. And on her face, there was a happy smile. So, ആ സ്ത്രീയുടെ മുഖത്ത്, ആ വ്യക്തിയുടെ മുഖത്ത് ഒരു പുഞ്ചിരി വന്നു. She made a brief courtesy to them. Courtesy, polite behavior that shows respect. So, when a guest comes to your house, how do you treat them? വീട്ടിൽ അതിഥി വരുമ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ എങ്ങനെയാണ് അവരെ സ്വീകരിക്കുക? ചിരിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് അവരോട് ഇരിക്കാൻ പറയും അല്ലേ? So, that's a kind of a courtesy, Maryada. She made a brief courtesy to them. As Mikali remained there, hesitatingly, indecision in speech or action. He does not know what to do. എന്ത് ചെയ്യണമെന്ന് അറിയില്ല. Rooted to the threshold, rooted, stay, unable to move, ചലിക്കാൻ പറ്റുന്നില്ല. To the threshold. Threshold is the floor at the bottom of a doorway. So he stood there on the doorway, unable to move. The Chinaman said to him, the Chinaman told to Mikali, "Come in. Do not be afraid. This is my wife." So what did he tell? Come inside the house. This is my wife. Mikali went into the room. Rather large it seemed, separated in the middle by a paper-colored screen. Mikali went inside the house. വീട്ടിനുള്ളിലേക്ക് പോയി. It was a big house, and it was separated in the middle by a colored paper screen. And in the middle of that room was separated by a paper screen. It was so clean and neat. The house was very clean and neat. നല്ല വൃത്തിയുള്ള വീട്. Though very poor looking, but there were not much. എന്തില്ല, ആർഭാടങ്ങളൊന്നുമില്ല. In the corner, he noticed a wicker cradle. Wicker is made of thin pieces of wood twisted together. മരക്കഷ്ണങ്ങൾ കൂട്ടിയുണ്ടാക്കിയ ഒരു cradle. Cradle is a baby bed with rockers. So this is a cradle. So, which is made of wicker. So this is made of wicker. So, that is my baby, said the young woman, cocking her head graciously to one side and smiling at him. So that is my baby. So she said, in that cradle, who is there? My baby. Said the woman, cocking her head. Cocking means to raise up to one side. So she was cocking her head. തല ചലിപ്പിക്കുകയാണ്. Graciously to one side. Graciously in a beautiful manner. And smiling at him. He is very tiny and beautiful. Come and see. He is very tiny and beautiful. Who is very tiny and beautiful? The baby. The baby is very tiny and beautiful. Come and see. Mikali went up closer and silently admired it. So Mikali went near the baby and admire it. Admire means look at it very lovingly, affectionately, aaradhanayode. A chubby baby, chubby, a fat baby. But in the recent past, out of the darkness of the metal body, slept peacefully, covered with a gold brocade cloth like a little king. But this baby was out of its mother's body and it slept peacefully. The baby was sleeping very peacefully, covered with gold brocade cloth, a cloth with design in gold like a little king. So when Mikali saw that baby, he felt that that baby is a little king, ഒരു രാജകുമാരനാണ് എന്ന് അവന് തോന്നി. Then the husband called his wife over. He told her to sit on a straw mat. Without a word, he sat down on her lap, the little famished one, bowing deeply before her. The woman leaned over with astonishment and drew back the covering in which the child was wrapped. It appeared to her in all its skeletonic horror. She gave a cry of immense pity, then pressed the babe to her heart, giving it the breast. Then, with a gesture of modesty, she brought forward a flap to her robe over the milk-swollen breast and the poor gluttonous infant suckling there. Then the husband called his wife over. So, that is the Chinaman. He called his wife. He told her to sit on a straw mat. There was a mat made of straw. പുല്ലിനെ കൊണ്ടുണ്ടാക്കിയ mat, പുൽപ്പായി. So she told him to sit on the mat. Without a word, he sat down on her lap, the little famished one, bowing deeply before her. Without saying anything, ഒന്നും പറയാതെ ആ പട്ടിണി കിടന്ന ഫെമിഷ്ഡ് പട്ടിണി കിടന്ന ആ കുട്ടിയെ he put it on her lap. The woman leaned over with astonishment, surprise, wonder, because she did not know what her husband is putting on her lap. So she leaned over with astonishment and drew back the cover in which the child was wrapped. And she drew back the cover in which the child was wrapped, covered. ആ കുട്ടിയെ പൊതിഞ്ഞു വെച്ച ആ കവർ അവൾ എടുത്ത് മാറ്റി. It appeared to her in all its skeletonic horror, skeletonic like a skeleton, astikooda. She gave a cry of immense pity. So when she saw the baby, she gave a cry of immense pity. She gave a cry of immense pity, sahadabam, sneham, and pressed the baby to her heart, giving it the breast. And what did she do, you know? She pressed the baby to the heart, ആ കുഞ്ഞിനെ തൻ്റെ നെഞ്ഞിനോട് ചേർത്ത് വെച്ചു, and giving it the breast, and she started feeding the baby with her milk. Then with a gesture of modesty, gesture is a movement of the body with a particular meaning. So with a gesture of modesty, humbleness, she brought forward a flap of her robe. So what did she do? Robe is her dress. So she brought a flap of her dress and covered her milk-swollen breast and the poor gluttonous infant suckling there. And the baby, that is Mikali's brother, was given milk by the wife of the Chinaman. So that is maternity. Adana Mahadrisneham. Because she thought of that baby as her own baby. അവളുടെ കുഞ്ഞിനെ പോലെ തന്നെയാണ് അവൾ ആ മിഖാലിയുടെ അനിയനെയും കണ്ടത്. There is a baby which is sleeping on the cradle. തൊട്ടിലൊരു കുട്ടി കിടന്ന് ഉറങ്ങുന്നുണ്ട്. So she felt the same love and feeling for Mikali's brother, and she started giving him the breast milk. Okay, now let's come to the question answers. Why did he feel immensely alone and lost? Who is he here? Mikali. It was very difficult for Mikali to get food and shelter. He was turned away mercilessly wherever he went, and Mikali could do nothing to help the baby, which kept on wailing due to hunger. Coming to the next question. What thought made a chill run up his spine? He was carrying such an unlucky child. Next one. What did the sound of the noon ringing remind him? He had eaten nothing since the day before. The next one. Why did Mikali begin to sob desperately? Life seemed to be full of horrors. Next one. Why did the Chinaman come to the refugee camp to sell paper knickknacks and charms? Next one. Why did refugees make fun of the Chinaman? For his color and his squint eyes. Next one. What did the Chinaman tell to Mikali? You mustn't cry, boy. And one more thing he told. What is it? Come with me. The next one. Why did Mikali long to flee? He had heard so many horrors about the cruelty of Orientals. Next one. Why did Mikali follow the Chinaman? Because there was nothing more awful to happen in his life. Next one. In what way was the Chinaman different from other refugees? Chinaman was kind and helped Mikali. Next one. Where did Chinaman take Mikali to? To his house. Next question. Describe how the Chinaman's wife behaved when she saw Mikali with her husband. Her face reddened, and with a smile and with utmost courtesy, she welcomed them. Next one. What did Mikali see there, that is in the house of the Chinaman? The Chinaman's baby. Next one. What did Mikali notice about the Chinaman's baby? It was a chubby baby which was sleeping like a king. Next one. What did the Chinaman's wife do when she saw the famished infant? She gave a cry of pity and pressed the baby to her heart, giving it the breast. Okay, now let's come to our assignment. You have to prepare a character sketch of Mikali, and you have to include the following points. Bond and affection between Mikali and his brother, the sufferings of Mikali, his helplessness, his physical status, that is, he's robust, healthy, 14 years old, and the importance of the character. So with these points, you have to prepare the assignment. That is the character sketch of Mikali. Okay, dear children, thank you and have a nice day.